And right now we're talking with Chuck Baldwin, the Constitution Party presidential candidate. I'm looking at the Constitution Party website right here. And just to read these three sentences, it says, according to the original intent of the Founding Fathers, these founding documents are the foundation of our liberty and the supreme law of the land. The sole purpose of government, as stated in the Declaration of Independence, is to secure our unalienable rights given us by our Creator. When government goes beyond this scope, it is usurpation, and liberty is compromise. We believe the major issues we face today are best solved by a renewed allegiance to the original intent of these founding documents. Chuck, what are the two or three main issues that really is the focus of the Constitution Party? And when you talk about the intent of the Founding Fathers, oftentimes the intent of the Founding Fathers is debated as what they meant. And how is it that the Constitution Party feels they have the best grasp of that?
Well, what they meant is what they said. And I think anything else is smoke and mirrors. Look, the real battle today in 2008, Richard, is not between Republicans and Democrats. Titles mean very little today. It's not between liberals and conservatives. Those titles mean very little as well. The battle today is between Americans and globalists. And Richard, John McCain is a globalist, and Barack Obama is a globalist. These men support the United Nations. They support the New World Order, and that's not my term. That's George Herbert Walker Bush's term. These are men that are going to support NAFTA. They're going to support the extension of these so-called free trade deals. They're going to support the continued open border philosophy of our country that leaves our borders wide open to not only illegal immigration, but also to potential terrorism. These are men that will support the creation of the North American community and the North American Union, which is very similar, as you know, to the European Union across the water. These are men that are going to continue to support this foreign policy of interventionism and preemptive war and meddlesome policies in the affairs of foreign nations. These are two gentlemen that are going to do nothing to restore constitutional government and allegiance to the Declaration of Independence. And so that's why, as a Constitution Party, we are saying to the American people, look, it doesn't matter whether you vote for Barack Obama or John McCain. On these issues, there is no difference. If you really do want to return to the founding principles of our country, to liberty, to freedom, to independence, you're going to have to look outside the two major parties. And we are the only candidate and the only party that is taking this message to the American people in 2008.
We have our political commentator, Jack Hunter, the Southern Avenger, who, surprisingly enough, not really, stopped by this morning because Chuck Baldwin's in the studio. And we've been talking about, you know, the Ron Paul
Sure.
basically getting thrown out of the Republican Party and what's going to happen in Minneapolis. And you and I often on this program talk about third parties and the importance of third parties. And here we have a presidential candidate, Chuck Baldwin, from the Constitution.
Well, you know, if there's an actual conservative running for president, I would have to stick my 2 cents in. Sorry I had to show up this morning. You know, we don't get that often. Ron Paul in the primaries, now Chuck Baldwin in the general election. You know, it's often said that if you vote, if you don't vote, you can't complain. I want to extend that. If you vote for the status quo every election, you can't complain about the status quo. If you vote for Barack Obama and John McCain and get to say you're tired of politics as usual, you're not doing yourself or this country any favors. It doesn't make any sense. When I was watching the Democratic Convention last night, Joe Biden speaking, what do we talk about on this program as it relates to Barack Obama, John McCain? And as a conservative, what I care about, I don't want bigger government, I don't want an interventionist foreign policy, and I want something done about illegal immigration. Well, I watched Joe Biden up there, I watched Ted Kennedy, I watched all these guys promise program after program, what they're going to do. That's what I expect from Democrats. All right, we're going to have a guy named Mitt Romney, who a lot of people want to be John McCain's running mate, speaking at the Republican Convention, who pretty much introduced socialized health care to this country. That's the conservative that people like Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, you know, all these guys, Mark Levin, hope and pray is going to be the VP. You know, the guy that introduced socialized health care. So what's conservative about that when we're talking about foreign policy? I'm sitting there watching Joe Biden last night talking about we need to stand up to Russia. Really? That's the aggressor in that situation? It's Georgia. We've talked about this on that program. I think Barack Obama promises more troops overseas, more military extension, and an extension of the American empire, which costs too much money, is running our budget into the ground, and the next generation is going to be paying for it. Illegal immigration, Ted Kennedy, in 1965, the Immigration Act of 1965, set us on the course we're on now, totally destroying this country as it relates to borders and the situation we have. In 1986 was a backer of the amnesty proposal, which led to what? McCain-Kennedy, comprehensive immigration reform supported by John McCain, our own South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, Joe Lieberman, who's not anywhere close to being conservative, who's going to be speaking at the convention. Chuck Baldwin said the problem is not between, Republicans and Democrats, but globalists and patriots. That's absolutely right. The Democrats and Republicans represent two heads of the same beast. If you vote for either one of them, you're going to get the same raw deal. The only choice in this election is somebody like Chuck Baldwin. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Chuck, I know you got to like hearing that kind of stuff back there, because obviously people are looking for alternatives to the broken situation that we have right now.
They are indeed, and unfortunately, over the last many decades, the American people have come to believe that we only have two parties and that nothing else exists. The fact of the matter, America is not built upon a two-party system. That's a misnomer. America is built upon the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. The two-party system evolved the way it did, and so forth. But the fact of the matter is, if you read George Washington's farewell address, and I have many times, and I know you have, he warns in that address about the overemphasis of party. He said, what would happen if you put party too much of a priority in your thinking? What will happen is you will start looking after the interests of the party instead of the interests of the country. And that's exactly what's going on now. Democrats are looking out for Democrats. Republicans are looking out for Republicans. And neither the Democrats nor the Republicans are looking out for America. And it's time that we start putting people in government that are going to look out for America and not simply for what's good for the party.
How many times have you heard on this program, folks, putting the party above the people, and there's something wrong with that? Okay, we got listeners who have questions for Chuck Baldwin, Constitution Party presidential candidate. Kevin on James Island here at 1250 WTMA. What's your question for Chuck Baldwin?
I want to know where he stands on taxes, and I disagree with him on the Obama over McCain.
All right, Kevin. Well, Kevin, let's start with the first part. And Kevin, thanks for the buzz. What about taxes? I know there's been so much talk about the fair tax, which isn't endorsed by the Republican Party, and the tax reform that we keep waiting on that isn't happening because government can manipulate their power and the people by manipulating the tax code.
Okay, to answer this, it's a multi-level answer, so bear with me a minute. I'm going to try to give this man a thorough answer. We got to do several things in order to conquer this problem. The first thing I do is I have this fantasy. Richard and Jack, I've just awakened. I'm President of the United States, and I have just appointed Ron Paul Secretary of the Treasury.
There's your solution. We're finished.
There is no more astute individual on Capitol Hill when it comes to economics than Ron Paul. And here's what we got to do. We've got to overturn the 16th Amendment. We've got to eliminate the income tax. We've got to eliminate the Internal Revenue Service. We've got to get rid of it. We've got to get the government out of our pocketbooks and off of our backs. If we are going to reintroduce prosperity and productivity in America, we've got to get government out of the way. Neither John McCain or Barack Obama are going to do this. I mean, they are not going to do anything to disrupt the status quo when it comes to the Internal Revenue Service. And I say we got to get rid of it altogether. The second thing we have to do is we have to slash, and I said slash, not just reduce, federal spending. You go back to 1994. I can remember when Newt Gingrich orchestrated his contract with America. He promised the American people, if you will elect Republican majorities to the House and Senate, we will do point by point by point the contract with America. One of those points was we will eliminate 5 federal departments. You remember this? Department of Education, Energy, Transportation, da-da-da. Not only did they not, and they did get both houses of Congress, and not only did they not eliminate any one of those federal departments, not only did they not reduce federal spending, they increased federal spending more than the Democrats did. And then whenever George Bush became president in 2000 and the Republicans controlled the entire federal government for the next 6 years, you got to go back to Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society to equal the increase of federal spending that occurred under the Republican administration and Republican in charge of Congress for those 6 years. So for them to say that they are fiscally conservative is a joke. How the American people today can look at the Republican Party and John McCain and say that you are a conservative when it comes to economics is a laugh. These guys are an embarrassment to traditional conservatism. So